Hello, and thank you for tuning in. Before getting to our main event, I'd like to make a few brief but important points. I'm not a law student, nor do I possess any credentials pertaining to the law. I do not work for a court, nor am I in any other way affiliated with the American Bar Association. My comments are of my own and from my own research and knowledge as it pertains to my time as a student at the University of Laverne taking a required course for a business degree. The sole purpose of this video is to fulfill my requirement for the previously mentioned course. Greetings to all of my classmates and anyone else tuning in. I'm sending you a very warm, socially distant embrace of friendship and respect, and above all else, I hope you and your family are doing well. Thank you for looking through this video. I'd also like to send a very special shout out to Mr. Ronnie Chow, who for the last 10 weeks led a great course for the legal environment of business with the University of Laverne. It has been a pleasure to participate in this course and analyze business through the lens of the legal world. There were many times when the words legal and moral collided, leaving me with a much better understanding of the legal environment of business. This assignment was no different. For the final paper, I chose to analyze the case involving the Washington League for Increased Transparency and Ethics, which I will refer to by their acronym WASHLITE, versus the Fox Corporation, Fox News Network, Fox News Channel, Fox Business Network, and Fox Business. For short, I will henceforth refer to them as Fox News and or the defense, represented by Mr. Michael Carvin. For background, WASHLITE is accusing Fox News of calling the COVID-19 pandemic a hoax and demanding that they report more accurate information on the pandemic and issue a retraction. While the case inflamed moral issues surrounding Fox News and their coverage of the COVID-19 pandemic, the plaintiff's argument was narrow at best, and as of May 27th, Judge Brian McDonald of Seattle's King County Superior Court issued an order granting the defense's motion to dismiss the case. A spokesperson for WASHLITE has already said they disagree with Judge McDonald's decision and are planning an appeal. Mr. Carvin, the counsel for the defense, argued in his motion to dismiss that WASHLITE's claims are in violation of the First Amendment, which grants any American freedoms concerning to religion, expression, and most important to this case, freedom of speech and press. He continuously attacked the plaintiff's argument that cable news is not afforded the same First Amendment protections as print journalism. One of the most powerful statements during his argument came when he argued that there cannot be one black and white truth when it comes to the COVID-19 pandemic because information on the subject changes every day. In allowing the case to continue, it would have extraordinary effects on the First Amendment. He pressed on to say that if the plaintiff's request were to be granted regarding the pandemic, it can lead to the closing of businesses and loss of revenue, calling into question where you draw the line and how you can police it. Fox News also got some help by amicus curiae, which is a person who is not a party to the case but assists the court by offering information, expertise, or insight that has a bearing on the issues in the case. For this, the Internet and Television Association, or NCTA, along with the Reporters Committee for Freedom of the Press, were both represented by Mr. Matthew Brill. He argued that people pay for cable and choose to watch whatever and whenever they want. Thus, information shared by an opinionated news network like Fox News is protected by the First Amendment. These organizations also use the current political climate to expand on their argument. In a statement following the ruling, a spokesperson for both parties stated that WASHLITE was using a false portrayal of Fox News' commentary in an attempt to silence a national news organization and settle a partisan grievance. They heavily criticized the move, talking about how the lawsuit is contemptuous to the foundation of free speech. It was the plaintiffs, represented by Ms. Catherine Clark, who alleged that Fox News was in violation of the Consumer Protection Act or CPA for short, citing RCW 19.86.090, where the defendants were engaging in unfair and deceptive conduct in calling the COVID-19 pandemic a hoax. Ms. Clark argued that Fox News was not entitled to the same protections as a truly free distributor of the news because they sell their content to a paying audience comprised of cable TV subscribers. The plaintiffs were seeking an order enjoining Fox News from televising any misleading information regarding the COVID-19 pandemic and an order for Fox News to issue a retraction of every false and or misleading statement regarding the pandemic. In hoping to make a link between the two, she offered that a consumer pays a monthly bill to a cable service provider who then pays Fox News. As such, Fox News, a provider of the service of distributing news, is subject to the laws of the CPA. She then argued that any debate for the response to COVID-19, such as shutdowns, herd immunity, wearing a mask in public, are all subject to opinions and can be argued in any way. However, to call the pandemic a hoax and essentially denying its existence was deceptive and misleading, and in their argument, endangered American people's lives. Judge McDonald presented some interesting questions to both parties during their statements. He posed the question to the defense asking whether or not constitutional protection should be enacted for factually false statements. He pressed on, questioning why there are laws protecting against slandering someone's name, but not engaging in false statements about a pandemic that can endanger someone's life. The judge also weighed the option of using precedent from the Alvarez case of 2012, where the Supreme Court ruled that the First Amendment trumps over the Stolen Valor Act. This case ultimately ruled that lying about something is not a crime. Judge McDonald also had some questions for Ms. Clark, asking whether or not such a suit will open the door for someone in a state less impacted by the virus to be able to then turn around and sue a company like, say, CNN over exaggerating the virus, leading to lost revenue as a result of shutdowns. Lastly, he asked how Fox News was different from print news. He gave reasoning that if someone purchases a newspaper for, say, a quarter, it should then turn them into a consumer and open up the newspaper to the same vulnerabilities under the Consumer Protection Act. Now, as I mentioned at the top, a ruling was already handed down on this case, and I must say, I agree with the ruling, despite the moral issues. Like most issues facing our country today, the pandemic has turned into a very ugly partisan fight, and this case was no different. It was a bold effort by WASHLITE, and they were given a moral victory when Judge McDonald called their efforts laudable. What's more is that the very day the judge issued his ruling, Sean Hannity, the Fox reporter most targeted in the lawsuit, asked partygoers in Missouri to wear a mask to help prevent the spread of coronavirus. This is quite the 180-degree spin from his stance of mid-February, when he may or may not have called the virus a hoax. While it was not a retraction by any means, WASHLITE ultimately got something they wanted: Fox News to report more factual information about the virus. Another interesting point was seeing the NCTA and Reporters Committee for Freedom of the Press come together in defense of their colleagues. Among the partisan issues we see today, there's a big divide amongst journalists, and yet when it came to an issue that was based on partisan issues, at least by their own account, they were able to come together to defend their ability to report without any oppression. It's important to note that Fox News asked for a 12b6 ruling, which means that Judge McDonald had to take the accusations as facts. There was a moment during Mr. Carvin's statements when Judge McDonald had to avoid looking at documents filed by the defense in assuming that the plaintiff's claims were facts. Despite accepting that Fox News called the virus a hoax and potentially endangered lives, Judge McDonald still granted the defense's motion for dismissal. WASHLITE has come out publicly disagreeing with the judge's decisions and has vowed a motion to appeal. In the state of Washington, the appellate court will hear the case and a ruling will be issued by a panel of 3 judges. Much like many subjects we debated in this course, this too was a tough case to read into because of the morality behind it. Our parents, society, and common decency all show us at a young age that lying is wrong. And yet, in the Alvarez decision, the Supreme Court stated that the First Amendment protects speech we detest as well as speech we embrace. Assuming that Fox News, as alleged in the lawsuit, knowingly lied about the severity of the COVID-19 pandemic in order to promote a separate agenda such as protecting the president, attacking the supposed radical left, or simply looking to expand on its own ratings, will not cost them in court. However, this is a strategy that they will eventually have to answer for, whether in the court of public opinion or a court well beyond our existence. Under the protection of the First Amendment, however, these statements remain something that are protected, and so Fox News gets to live to lie another day, while consumers are left having to decide who they can trust to deliver the truth, even in matters that pertain to their own health. Thanks again for tuning in and making it all the way through the end of this presentation. To Mr. Chow and my colleagues, I wish you the very best in your collegiate and professional journeys. I hope you have a wonderful summer. Take care.